Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. I'm pleased to announce an interview that I will be doing with a mining executive from Silver Elephant Mining. It's a silver exploration company, and I'll be interviewing the chairman, Mr. John Lee. He has many years of experience in mining, and he has degrees in economics and engineering. He specializes in mergers and acquisitions and has raised more than $110 million in his career. This will be a fascinating interview where we touch upon different aspects of silver mining, the silver market in general, Warren Buffett, and the silver milkshake. Yes, indeed. Let's explore. And I am here with John Lee, the chairman of Silver Elephant Mining Corporation now. So, John, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your target market is.
Well, Sullivan Metal, it's very good to be on your show for the first time, and thank you for the invitation. Silver Elephant is a Toronto Stock Exchange listed silver exploration company. We target stock investors who want to own as much silver in the ground as possible.
Very good. All right. Well, how do you compete in the marketplace?
Yeah, Sullivan Metals, there are hundreds of mining companies or maybe thousands. Our company focused on silver exploration, not copper, lithium, or cobalt. We are expert exploration geologists that are very good at finding silver prospects. We drill them, we add silver ounces into those projects in the ground to increase shareholder value.
Very good. It's amazing. There's a lot of technology. There's a lot of geology. You have to know a lot in those areas and sciences in order to be able to find those prospects. And so it is very interesting where the technology is going in that area. And a lot of companies are pursuing these silver veins and these types of prospects. But how is your mining project different from others out there?
Yeah, Sullivan Metals, nowadays technology is amazing. Used to take days to map out the project, and now you can fly, high-res digital drones, and you can get very granular details about these assets. And some of the 3D modeling software nowadays, which is not previously available. So we're absolutely taking advantage of those latest technologies. Going to our project, to answer your question, our flagship project, Pulukayo, is the second largest silver mine, based on historical production of 670 million ounces of silver. It is really a totally different gravy. And the mine was stopped in 1952 by the government. Through 90,000 meters of drilling, the deposit we managed to verify independently over 57 million ounces of silver. And that will be $1.5 billion of silver in the ground. And that was just the 30% of the silver known vein that's drilled, which extends over 3 kilometers. You can see that given only 30% of the vein has been explored less than a kilometer, the potential is excellent to double the resources or more. And further, we recently just acquired a project called ELEF.to in July. That project also features the very rare 95-meter wide intersections of gold and silver at about 1 gram gold equivalent. So that's about $60 a ton of materials in the ground. And 95 meters is about, we were talking about skyscrapers earlier before the show. 95 meters is a 35 floor building. So you can imagine the minerals and materials and metals available from the ground up going down to 30 floors deep. Now, the deposit is a kilometer in strike and it's open at depth. This is clearly a bulk tonnage project. And as we drill, the deposit will only grow in tonnages and potentially reach world class in size. Our overall objective for the companies is to achieve 100 to 200 million ounces of silver resource within the next 12 to 18 months. And we're very confident. We believe we're well on our way to achieve that objective.
It's amazing. I've done videos about different mining exploration and different deposits being found, and it is exciting to hear, especially when we talk about the technology and be able to recognize and find these new sources. And so, is this a primary silver mining operation, right? Or are you doing this as part of a byproduct of other metals as well?
And solid metals, silver, I think approximately 70% of the silver is produced as a byproduct from copper or zinc or even gold mines. In this circumstance, the mine Pulukayo is predominantly silver. It does have some lead and zinc byproduct credit, just as a typical of a sulfide deposit. And whereas the ELEF.to project is gold dominant with silver as byproduct credit. So the two are a little different animal. However, both projects we have the precious metals that account for majority of the value in the ground.
Very good. Well, that's exciting to hear. And this is in Bolivia, and so Bolivia is a special place. You have the one mine, but you're talking about two different areas. Are they both in Bolivia?
Yes, they are. And we specialize in Bolivia.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about the market there and about why Bolivia? Is it safe? What are the prospects in Bolivia?
Solid metals, I'm a bit of a world traveler. I've been to over 40 countries scouting for assets all over the world. Usually I do around the world trip 5 to 10 times a year. And this year is a little bit atypical, slowed down due to COVID. At first scouting, our team, including myself, first set foot in Bolivia in 2005. And that was before the socialist president Evo Morales came into power. During the intervening years, we've been working on the project without any government interference. And the reason for that is Solid Metals, we foster a very strong community relationship. We're the largest employer of the town of Pulukayo. We pay above average salaries to these workers, and we take care of their families and have a very good benefit package for them. And now Evo has fled Bolivia in November, and the pro-free market government has been in place in the last 8 months. And we see an opening of the country. The government is pro-free market, firmly aligned with the likes of Peru, Brazil, and United States. And the United States is contemplating opening U.S. embassy for the first time in Bolivia in more than 15 years. As with all investments, we want to look not from the rearview mirror, but looking forward and look at the geological potential and the government welcoming, and also the people welcoming foreign investments. And no longer those divisive politics. We think Bolivia is a very overlooked destination that would only gain recognitions as a favorable investment destination as time goes on. I physically lived in Bolivia for 3 years. It's a very conservative country. There's not a lot of income disparities and wealth gaps, and never do I once feel threatened working, or living in that country. So we're very comfortable. Not to mention the last point I forgot is Bolivia is the 6th largest silver producer in the world today, based on current silver production, and is ranked ahead of Argentina of all places. And this is despite lack of foreign investment. So as I said, as more companies discover the potential of Bolivia, we think that there's going to be a renaissance coming in Bolivia, and we think the risk is very manageable.
Especially with the new discoveries, and I think you've talked about how, you've discovered the density of silver when you've drilled down. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. For example, Solid metals, for some of your audience that are maybe new or novice to silver mining, actually, so to get the metal to what you see as a silver eagle from the ground is actually go through several very extensive and capital intensive steps, from taking the ore out of the ground. And it could be looking exactly ordinary like the dirt you see from your backyard. It could be no different. And the metal content in these ore range from an ounce in the ground to 20 ounce to 30 ounce to 50 ounce. So, that is the starting point. Once the ore is dug out of the ground, you have to grind it to very fine, granular, almost like milkshake, like these milk powders that you drink in the morning. And then from there, you apply chemicals to float the dirt. And then the heavy particles, the metal-bearing minerals, would then float down because they have higher density. And from there, you would smelt it, literally burn it, and then the silver and lead and zinc will separate based on different smelting temperatures. And from there, you get something around 80 to 70% of silver ore. It's impure, but it's highly concentrated silver metal. And from there, it goes to refinery. of which you refine the 80%, 70% silver ore then onto become refined silver bars. And from there, then you cast these bars into coins. Now, the Pulicayo mine is very special in that we just put out a drill a couple of weeks ago, and it featured a drill intercept of 5 meters of 1,500 grams of silver per ton. And that's 50 ounces of silver per ton of ore. Or at today's approximately $30 per ounce, you're looking at a ton of ore at $1,500 worth. It takes maybe $50 to get the ore out of the ground and another $50 to $100 to process it, and then smelting charge another $100 also. So you can see that this could become a very, very profitable endeavor and venture. And the intercept is within 100 meters of intercept of 150 grams of per ton of silver content in the ground, and that will translate to $150 a ton. Again, is very respectable and certainly is a very potentially profitable operation to be both mining these grades of materials and then process them, float them, smelt them, and refine them, and then sell them for profit. So I think the uniqueness is that it's not only the existence of the ore, but the grade. And one of the traders, Trafigura, visited our project, and they were in amazement, in disbelief, to be grabbing samples of silver that's over 500 grams per ton on surface. I mean, it's literally a virgin territory for many, for example, United States, Nevada, or in Mexico, in the Mexico silver belt. A lot of that is already heavily exploited and not leaving a lot of room for new entrants. And Bolivia is one of the very few destinations where we think that there's absolutely huge potential for massive discoveries.
So if we liken it to your previous analogy, that's one thick silver milkshake in the morning, right?
Oh, milkshake is a very good analogy because when you apply the agent to float the grinded stuff out of the ground, it looks exactly like milkshake. It's like sesame milkshake.
Right.
It isn't like chocolate milkshake, that would be a little bit prudish, but it's like a sesame milkshake, and the reason is clear, right? Because metal, silver is gray.
That's right.
And from there, the agent will attach the to the metal and gravitate, and from there you take that milkshake and then you put that you dry it so it becomes a sort of very dense powder, and from there you smelt it.
Very good, very interesting. And so for some who may wonder and be concerned, what about the environmental effects? Is there any restrictions, any kind of issues environmentally, and be able to do it in an environmentally safe manner?
Some of the metal, silver, as you know, touches all facets of our modern living. It is in solar panels. It is in medical usage. It is an excellent conductor in electronics. And every computer screen you look at, and very computer, you have contents of silver, and even your iPhone. There's always an environmental footprint for every mining operation. And we operate Silver Elephant on the most stringent environmental standards above and beyond what's required of us in Bolivia. And our VP of Environment is from the likes of Barrick, over 30 years of experience in environmental compliance. So for every step of it's a bit of a long-winded subject, but salivate metal, every step of this mining process has associated environmental safeguards that must be put in place. So, for example, when you mine the ore out of the ground, and when you process it by applying to the agent is then recycled 100%. And once you take the metal part out, and then there's what they call the tailings, salivate metals, because there are some other residuals that are not of value. So you need to build a tailings pond, of which there are linens to make sure that there's no leakage. And from there on, when you feed the concentrate, what they call the concentrate, to smelter, nowadays there's a very strict emission standards that probably is less than what's coming out of your car, and so that is again further steps to safeguard on the air pollution. So I mean, there is going to be environmental footprint and carbon footprint. I mean, must make no mistake about it. However, there's always trade-offs, and as a company, a specialist on the Toronto Stock Exchange main board, we try to go above and beyond the requirement of each country that we operate in to the very highest standards that we can adhere to.
Which is wonderful to hear. That's great, because I think that is something that people need to know and consider, that a lot of these mining companies, and yours included, you've really taken the steps to help protect, and the earth heals itself after the mining is finished. Well, very good. So why buy Silver Elephant, and why now?
Yeah, well, Silver Metals, what you touched on is a very passionate subject of ours, and I have a daughter. I want to make sure we afford her with a good. I leave the place better than I was born into. So consider this, Silver Metal. I think around. I recall, and I could be mistaken by a slight bit, but around 70% of the metal production come from ninja miners, like especially gold and silver. And so what I mean by that is they have total disregard for the environment. They pollute the rivers. They don't have, especially a lot of the ninja miners, and it could be Aboriginals, and it could be otherwise. So it's almost like which would you rather have, right? It is that percentage of people that is actually polluting the world much in really, really terrible, than to be picking at a company like Elephant to be producing metals at the highest standards. It is a bit like California, right, where you're imposing and telling people what the size of the furnace you can install in your homes, and yet at the same time, these homeless people are on the street and they're defecating and they're doing all sorts of crazy things, and you don't pay attention to them.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. There's a little bit of hypocrisy with some of these policies out there. You're right.
And then you have these NGOs that target some mining companies, and I think they do have some. There's always some element of reason to it and validity to it. But then I couldn't help but think that they go after these guys just because it can make a good name out of it, and because these companies have shareholders and have responsibilities and have a big war treasury, and of which to go after. If they really care, they could spend a lot more money on educating, right, the ninja miners as to what they're doing with. Even today they're still using mercury to separate silver from the ore, and the gold, and panning gold with cyanide. It's horrible.
Yes.
And yet nobody's doing anything about it because of racial, whatever equality you want to talk about of the day.
Right.
So we're a little bit disenchanted. However, not to say, like Jeff Bezos said, whenever you face a criticism, it's very simple. You look yourself in the mirror and ask, are these valid reasoning or not? So from our perspective, just because somebody else is speeding doesn't mean that it doesn't give us the entitlement to speed. That's not the way we look at it. We just say, hey, look, we're going to do the very best we can, and we are protecting our shareholders, protect our environment, and we offer the best product to bring the best product to the market, and that are socially, environmentally responsible. So that's something we're very, very passionate about, and I appreciate you brought up that point. Now let's go back to your question about, hey, why buy Silver Elephant? As on the outset, I sort of share with the audience as to what we do, and what we're really doing is looking to provide that alpha to investors looking for leverage on silver. So think of it as a bit like a silver call option without an expiry, because the silver is in the ground; it doesn't expire. And so we have a lot of silvers in the ground, and if you buy Silver Elephant because you believe that there's going to be a rising silver bull market. We can delve into a bit of fundamentals for silver and gold. Jay Powell 2 months ago affirmed their stance on a 0% interest rate for the next 3 years. There's no secret. The cat's out of the bag. The Fed is already embarking on QE infinity. The balance sheet of the Fed doubled from 3 trillion to 7 trillion, and the deficit is running at about $1 trillion a quarter. Solid metal. This is absolutely mind-boggling.
It's insanity.
And it's insanity. And then you have unemployment anywhere from 10 to 30%, depending on how you calculate and how you factor into the unmotivated workers. And Like if you just scale up if you just scale down and motivated workers, then your employment scale up. And then you have the geopolitics of the trade war, North Korea, Hong Kong, India, and the bomb just went off in Lebanon. And so fundamentals couldn't be more bullish. And we think it's only in the start because less than 2%, not even 1% of the investment capital pool is invested in gold and silver. So we think that the game's only started. And then just real quick point on looking at the investment, you have to look at fundamentals, not only fundamentals, but the technical as a compass for where you're flying.
Right.
And technically, gold just broken out of its all-time high in 1900. Yes, there's a bit of churning back and forth, and there's a bit of there's a bit of a correction going on. It's not entirely unusual or abnormal in any way. You have an emphatic breakout of 1800, went to 2100 in short order. Now it's retesting what we call the support, used to be called the resistance. And so, the best traders will tell you that try to buy 20% from the bottom and exit 20% from the top. Then, so looking at gold, you have to say that we're not even 10% from the bottom, and that this is a safe place to get. I'd rather be buying today at 1926 than to be buying at 1718, because you never knew, right? It took 7 years for silver to get out of $20.
That's right.
7 years of pain like we did, and so now you rather wait for the charts to have broken out of its resistance level and to have tested the support like we're doing now. And in terms of timing, real quick, the traders and the powers that be is going to come back from the Hamptons and wherever, what have you. And if they see a $2,000 print on gold in September, I think that is going to accelerate the trend moving forward. And we could be entering what I call the parabolic phase. And Sullivan Metal, while we're talking about sort of what we're passionate about on silver, and just real quick, 2011 gold was 1800 and silver was already 50. So the gold to silver ratio, I'm sure, the subject's been touched upon again, but it's worth to remind, was 30. So if you look at the big saucer shape, which gold had just established with the bottom of about 1,000 and the neckline of 2,000 in the last 10 years, and if you add that, if you just subtract 1,000 from 2,000, you add that 1,000 on top of 2,000, you got a 3,000 price for gold. So then you apply a 30 to 1 gold to silver ratio, you're looking at a target of 100. I think that is probably a likely destination for where silver might go in the next 12 to 18 months. But in the short term, I authored a video in July 1st, and I said silver is going to go to $32 when silver is 18 by the end of the year, and I'm sticking to that.
I was just going to mention that video because we're getting closer now. We're getting close. It's like you said, we've had these speed bumps with the gold and silver price, and I'm sort of a realist when it comes to silver. I try not to overhype it or what have you, and I've noticed that the gold to silver ratio has been widening for quite a while, and really seeing that where gold is now, the silver should be much higher. It is squeezing down, but even if looking at the fundamentals of where silver is, I'm still actually bullish on silver, because even if that ratio doesn't squeeze down to 30, let's say it goes to 50 or 45, I think that's quite a possibility, because silver is being viewed, I believe, as even more so as an industrial metal, and also how it's being utilized in all different areas in technology, from industrial to computer science to biomedical. And so Apple stock is doing very well right now. We're seeing aspects of the economy bouncing back, and I believe silver is going to be in great demand in the coming years. And at the very worst case scenario, it's going to ride the coattails of gold, as you said. And so even if the ratio doesn't narrow down to 30, I believe it's still bullish for silver. And so that's a good prospect down the road.
Well, a couple of things. Sullivan, you touched on a couple of things. We're on the same page, but if I could just sort of rephrase what you were saying. Well, first of all, in terms of timing, silver outperforms gold in the aftermath of a crisis during a recovery phase, such as 2011.
Right.
And silver is what I call the greed trade, whereas the gold is a fear trade. And it's not so much the industrial demand that supports a bull market in silver. It underpins the price, but it's always the investment demand and the greed trade that really sort of put the icing on silver. And the rationale put a $32 price but before the end of the year, because I believe that gold is going to break out of 1800 and then to about 2000 before the end of the year, and then the gold has reached that level faster than I anticipated. And the current gold to silver ratio is around 70, and that is actually the historical norm. So the way I sort of forecast silver based on the gold silver ratio of 70 and a $2,000, $2,100 gold, then you're looking at about $32 silver, which coincidentally is a fairly big resistance level. So that's why how that 32 come from. So I do agree with you that if gold were to sort of, I do believe that gold is going to rebound very sooner or later, around September, back above 2000. If that's the case, we don't really need to have additional appreciable gains for gold for silver to go to that $32 target. However, if gold were to sort of do this thing and start doing this, nobody really knows, because we're in absolutely uncharted territory. Like gold is you never seen $2,000, so we're witnessing history in the making.
Right.
Which you can front kids in the times to come, how it go play out in the next 6 to 12 months. So I think, look, people say what happened after 32, and I do agree. I'm not touting a $300 gold price and whatnot, silver price and whatnot. So I'm saying, hey, look, after $32, let's look at where the gold price is, right? If gold is 2,500 and silver is 32, then I'm going to say, hey, look, we can get a $50 very quickly. So it depends on the price of gold, and also depends on the price of, also depends on the dollar index. That was going to play a big part, and also plays on looking at how the market and equity market recovers. You don't want to have a big equity correction for silver, because, as I mentioned, it's a greed trade, and it's not going to play well for silver either. So there's a lot of interrelated sort of correlated market at play, and I think the first thing first, by sort of early part of September, we should see a $2,000 gold print, of which accompanied by a $32 silver, and after that, it's really anybody's guess.
Very good points, definitely. And I want to touch on this too, because your company is backed by billionaire Eric Sprott, and you've posted a video with an open letter to Warren Buffett. And I covered in the news recently that Warren Buffett's company has made an investment into a gold mining stock there. So that's very fascinating that he's put some money into Barrick, and he's one step closer there to getting to moving into silver, which he had silver. He bought silver in 1997, but it's kind of interesting that you had put that open letter out there, and you had talked about, that he should consider gold and silver mining stocks, but he's halfway there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, a lot of thoughts, depending on how much time we have. But Sullivan Metal, I'm a student of Warren Buffett. I started my career in the late 90s in the Silicon Valley. And I somewhat semi-retired in year 2000. I was very lucky in timing, and I studied the market. I have an economics degree, and at that time, Sullivan Metal, I don't know how old you are, but at that time, I was like, well, the equity market is so crazy overvalued. The PE ratio at the time was over 30, which is unprecedented, and Buffett had noted that in the internet bubble. Then sort of I continued to study it through the reason such high PE was happening, and eventually led me to an overpriced dollar, and then eventually led me to gold. So that's how sort of everything started. However, just so that I've been studying Buffett for the last 20 years. The letter that I gave to Buffett, I wrote a video letter. You can Google John Lee Silver Elephant letter to Buffett, which has got about 50,000 views. It's really about a tongue in cheek. Sullivan Metal is really meant for large pension funds and wealth management and large hedge fund investors looking at sort of, on a big picture, right, of where to put their money. And so I was telling Buffett, hey, look, about tongue in cheek, so you saw airlines and you saw banks and you saw, at the bottom, and now the stock and these stocks have recovered to all-time high, and what are you going to do with your money? And you had talked about unconventional investment in 97 in silver and whatnot, gold. And it's entirely logical to be going after gold and silver because, entire annual silver production is only $25 billion, and he's got $100 billion in, in his war chest. So he couldn't possibly go after silver. So it's logical to go after gold. And here's what I speculate, and it's almost a foregone conclusion. I mean, if he were to diversify, I'm just talking about his cash, but not talking about the overall value of his portfolio, which is hundreds of billions of dollars. But he's got $100 billion. 5% of that would be 5 billion, of which he only got 500 million. So he's got another 10x to go just in the mining companies. And then, if you cannot be bullish on gold mining companies and not bullish on gold. So he's going to most likely get another $5 billion in gold to get to around 10% mark, maybe even more. And he's known to make big bets, right? He said diversification is stupid idea. And and as the price goes up, it's only going to motivate him more to do more. And the sequence of his purchases also makes perfect sense, because you don't want to be buying gold first and then be buying mining shares. You'll be shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, imagine the price of Barrick would be if you made a news that you bought $1 billion of gold. So everything what he does is very rational, and it's a very calculated move. Just last point on that Buffett fund is, I think he's very calculated in that sense that he's one of the wealthiest person in the world, and certainly one of the top 3 or top 5 in the United States. That there's other factors to consider than just making money, and there could be ramifications for him to go into gold, and something and patriotic, even though gold and silver is clearly stated in the Constitution as the only form of legal tender. So for him to make the entry into gold, I really commend him on that, and he definitely had considered all options available, and this is really the last investment resort. I don't think it was in his interest to go after it, because he could get some sort of unwelcomed backlash from that, not only from investors but from potentially the power that be. So it is a very calculated, strategic move. And so on that note, you wouldn't want to make that move unless you really sort of ready to go all in. And this is where I look at the whole picture.
I agree, because he's not been a big fan of gold itself. He says it has no utility in the past. So,
Salvage metal, there's one thing what you say and what you think and what you do. I mean, what is Buffett going to say? Wow, the greenbacks are fiat, and it really is only the faith of the government. And the Bretton Woods Accord in 1973 is doomed to fail because the U.S. deficit is running because the U.S. has become a debtor since 1980. I mean, what is he going to say? Is that gold is really the only currency in the world that's going to survive? He is a student of history. He's one of the smartest guy out there. As with Bernanke and Janet Yellen and Alan Greenspan, it's just these guys know very well, and the things that I mentioned, as you are, depending on the title that you wear, and depending on sort of the amount of money you're the one of the most wealthy person in the world, right? You don't want problem from the government or the IRS or people giving problems. So I don't think for a minute that they don't know why gold. Like there's a reason for them to pretend to be ignoring gold, and just funny enough, Warren Buffett is a very understated and very sort of a miser, kind of a very sort of can't think of the word, but he's a very frugal guy, as you know, and he eat McDonald's and he eat Dairy Queens, and he said, "Oh, I support paying the taxes." I mean, something like, do you really think that he supports paying billions of dollars to the government, of which that generates no utility for him? Of course not. But of course he has to say that, right? So there's a lot of lip service that these power of that pay, but beneath the surface, there's a lot more things going on.
Very true. I agree completely. Definitely. Well, very good. Mr. Lee, thank you so much. This has been a very eye-opening interview, and I appreciate you sharing your thoughts not only on the market, but also on what Silver Elephant is doing, and as well as silver mining in general. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Yeah, so some of the metals, every investor has a different time horizon, risk tolerance, and portfolio management, and amount of money you own and store, and your age and whatnot. And I would just say, in a diversified portfolio, is worth. If you have money in the bank, it's worth allocating some of that into gold and silver. It is money, okay? Especially given that these accounts are not giving you any interest. So, and I'm probably a lot of your audience already have a holding in gold and silver, so that's great. But however, if you have equity investments, and I would shy away from bonds because they don't yield anything. You're better off buying first class post stamps that are good for first class forever. I got a bunch of those. You're better doing that than buying bonds. But if you have any equity holdings, I will recommend diversifying some of that into mining companies. Maybe 10 or 20%. For me, it's 80%, but for other people, maybe different. Because that provides that leverage to the metal prices. So to that extent, Silver Elephant is a good vehicle for those looking for leverage to silver prices. Their company is funded by Eric Sprott as a marquee billionaire investor, and we're managed by mining veterans from the likes of Hecla and Barrick. These are big mining companies. The company has very healthy liquidity, trading liquidity to $1 million a day. The market cap just under $100 million, even though we're a penny stock. But I think for retail investors or entry-level positions for institutional investors, it is sizable enough that you don't have to worry about not being able to get rid of your position. Institutional insiders own 35% of the company, so we have a lot of skin in the game. We're not just to collect salaries. And we've just put out the interview is quite succinct in timing, and that we just put out the news release yesterday that we are drilling our Triunfo project. And a lot of times, as we have good drill intercept, by proving up additional ounces of gold and silver in the ground, and the value of the company will be adjusted accordingly. And lastly, Eric Sprott, as you know, a couple of weeks ago, just announced his intention to buy up to $1.5 billion of silver physical, as he did back in 2011, announcing he's going to buy silver physical, and that was part of the reason silver got driven to $50. So the genie is squeezing the bottle, and we'll just urge investors not to wait too long if you don't have a position, get things started. And Silver Elephant is a pretty good vehicle to get things moving. Back to you.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much for the recap. And this is the sound of silver that comes out of the ground and into your hands. And what the John Lee is doing is participating in that process with his company in Bolivia. So thanks again to Mr. John Lee for joining us here today. And I want to extend a multitude of gratitude to all of you for being with us, and make sure to stay tuned for more videos to come. And I'd like to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.